Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna go inside this old moulin to see how flour has been traditionally made in France. It's so windy in this part of France, and this is what makes for a really great moulin. You need the wind. Julien is the miller, and he's gonna show us exactly what it takes to take wheat and turn it into flour. And then I'm gonna take you back to my kitchen and show you how to make some delicious bread with this flour. Come on.
The moulin dates back to 1842 and produced flour up until 1930. But then it was the victim of a tax that was based on the notion that any windmill fitted with sails, even in a dilapidated state, was a working mill and therefore should be taxed. But in 1997, the local town restored the mill, and they have been producing local flour ever since in the traditional way. All right, so it's time to head into the moulin. I was curious to see what it would look like inside.
Oh wow, it's a tight space in here.
Yes. Here you have the grain.
The grain is grown just 6 kilometers from this moulin, making the flour very local. The moulin has 3 different floors leading up to the top, each floor playing a part in the production of the flour. And as you go up the stairs, and they are very tiny, narrow little stairs, it starts to get louder and louder as you can hear the sails in the wind really at work. Julien wanted me to start at the very top because this is where the whole process begins.
You can see the roof, the sails.
Yes.
And the wind from the sails is the energy that is powering these large gears, which then passes the energy to the shaft down below to where the millstones are. The interesting thing about this moulin is that the sails are actually made out of wood and not canvas, which is what most moulins of its day were made out of. This was an amazing invention that allowed the miller to be able to expand or contract the sails based on the wind. Not enough wind and the sails would be let out full force, just like this. Too much wind and the miller would be able to collapse the sails and pull them in so that they would become much thinner, looking like this.
Oh, they are. Oh, that's so cool.
Being able to control the sails in relation to the wind was revolutionary because it meant that the moulin could always be in production and wouldn't have to shut down if the wind conditions were not ideal. Then it was down to the second floor to see where the millstones were grinding the grain. Julien explained that the grain would come down this feed tube and into this hopper.
You can see the grain.
Then there is this little feed tube that comes out of the hopper and leads to a hole where the shaft is actually turning the millstones below. Julien lifted up the hatch and there they were, grinding away.
That's the stone that's crushing the wheat.
Yes, exactly.
I was curious about this little bell I saw on the side and wondering what it was used for. Then Julien told me about an ingenious system that the millers developed to prevent a fire.
You have to put this in a quantity of grain.
It was a system of a fabric and a rope, which actually functioned like a little pulley. So the fabric was placed into the grain, and if the hopper was full, the fabric would stay put, the rope wouldn't move, and nothing would happen. But if the hopper ran out of grain, the risk would be of fire because those millstones grinding on each other instead of the grain could actually ignite a spark and cause a fire. But if the hopper was empty, the fabric would move, which would mean the rope would move, which would then ring the bell.
The bell is moving.
Then it was down to the first floor to see where the actual flour was being produced and how it was being separated. Julien explained that the grains that we saw above that were being crushed by the millstones were then coming down these 2 tubes and being separated into 2 different directions. This was actually pretty ingenious, and without getting too technical, basically what was happening is this contraption above was sifting and separating the flour into very whole grain flour, something you might use for a rustic bread, to finer flour that you might be using for something like cakes or cookies.
You can see this kind.
Oh, wow, yeah.
This kind of
Can I touch it?
yes.
Oh, it's still so soft though.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, okay, and it's done. It's just whole grain and it's done.
Yes. It is
Okay,
done.
and it's
What's interesting about the production of this flour is that it's only put through the millstone one time. So this in fact makes this flour a little less processed, which allows it to then hold on to more of its nutrients, making it a more nutrient-dense flour. There is also nothing else added to this flour in the way of preservatives. So it's a really pure, beautiful flour. I've always seen these moulins in France out in the countryside and wondered what was inside them. I was completely blown away by how much engineering is inside them and what they can do. Then I had to go to the gift shop and get my own little packet of flour. In the gift shop, you can get all kinds of local products, from salt to sardines, which the area is known for, salted caramels, of course, some of the local beer that is produced in the area. You can also get some of the wonderful local jams as well. But I was on the hunt for the flour, and there it was. I love the simple brown bag packaging. I think it's really beautiful. They also sell the sarrasin flour, which is the type of flour that's used to make the local galettes.
Okay, so there is a recipe on their website for this delicious homemade bread that I have to try. We have to give this flour a test. So I'm gonna buy a big bag of this and give it a try.
And then I bought a few of these caramel cookies to bring back for the girls.
All right, let's get back to the kitchen.
I love driving in this area in France near our house because it's always such a pretty drive. It's definitely a welcome change from all of the freeways and the traffic of LA.
All right, well, welcome back to my kitchen. For the last few days, I have been having a lot of fun experimenting with this flour. It's really fantastic. I've made a lot of the recipes on the website. They're super easy and really good, but the one that I think you guys will really enjoy is the one for the baguette. It couldn't have been easier. So the first thing we're gonna do is get our yeast going. So I have 300 milliliters of warm water in this little measuring pitcher. To that, I'm gonna add 1 and about 1/4 packets of yeast. And I have been really impressed by the yeast here in France. Now this one is super active, so maybe that's why, but it really works well. There we go. I just was so impressed the first time I tried this recipe and I took the baguettes out of the oven. I was amazed. Even my French nephew couldn't believe I made them. He was like, did you make that? I've tried to make baguettes in the States and I have not had as much success as I've had with this recipe. And the good news is you can put the recipes in English or French. You can toggle back and forth. So if you want them in English, that is available to you. We also made the recipe for the boule, which was also amazing. I mean, the interior with this flour was so delicious, but that takes 3 hours of rising time, where this only takes an hour and a half. So I thought this might be better. So we're gonna let this sit for about 5 minutes. Then I'm going to weigh my flour. So thanks to everybody who recommended I get a little kitchen scale to measure out the European quantities for my recipes. This little thing has been working like a charm. So we are gonna use this, and it calls for 375 grams of flour. So I did buy some US cup measuring cups when we first moved into this house. But when making bread, too much flour or not enough flour can really make a difference. So I think it's probably best that you measure it anyway. Okay, 375, exactly. Okay. The thing that is so beautiful about this flour is the texture. It's so soft, it's so pillowy, it almost feels like cornstarch. It's just so beautiful. But if you're not working with this flour, not a problem. You can do this with regular all-purpose flour too. Then we're gonna add about a teaspoon of salt going in. Then we are just going to whisk this up like so and add the yeast. This is looking pretty good. See how cloudy it is? That's how you know the yeast is activating. All right, so in it goes. And then you just want to whisk it up with the spoon, and that is it. I mean, could this be any easier? At this stage, your dough is going to be pretty sticky, but that's okay because we're just going to allow it to rise. We don't need to really touch it or knead it, so it's okay if it's sticky. Now, because this is such a beautiful fine flour, if you're working with all-purpose flour, it might become a little bit more dense, so you might need to add a little bit more warm water. Don't worry, it just should look like this. All right, sticky and doughy. So if you need to add maybe another 1/4 cup, 1/3 of a cup of warm water, that's okay. Then I'm gonna add just a little bit of olive oil in the center of the bowl there. You could use vegetable oil, canola oil, whatever you have. I just have olive oil right now, so I'm gonna use that. There we go, just so it's a little easier to get out of the bowl once it's been risen. Then we are going to plop this dough in the center. Now this is going to make 2 baguettes. It might not look like that right now, but it is going to rise to quite a height. Last time I made this, it took up the whole bowl, so it did rise quite a bit. Then I am going to cover it with some plastic wrap. That will create a really nice airtight seal. And I think the best place to rise bread is in your oven with the door shut and the oven turned off. That is really the most draft-free place in your home. There, just like that, an hour and a half. All right, so it's been an hour and a half and my dough has risen. Look at that, isn't that gorgeous?
Well, that thing's about to pop.
I know, this thing's about to,
camera lady. You can see how much like gas is in here because even my plastic has domed. I'm telling you, this French yeast is really amazing. Look at that. Even the seagulls are impressed. This looks like a pretty sticky dough, so I am going to just really flour my board here. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to show you is look what I found at the grocery store. One of these little baguette tin. Now, if you can't find this at your grocery store, I'll leave you a link to Amazon. I know that you can find them on Amazon. I do recommend them. I think that it keeps the shape, it helps ventilate the heat, and the metal I think also gives you a crusty underside. So I do think they're a good investment if you're gonna make a baguette. A little more flour on the hands, maybe a little bit more flour on the dough. There we go. Oh, this flour is so beautiful, it's so soft. There, and this dough is so soft and beautiful. Okay. Once the dough is like this and it's more manageable and you can actually handle it, then what I do is flip my board over and add more flour here. This then gives me a clean board to be working with. Otherwise, it will always stick on that real sticky dough that's on the other side. So this way, I'm working with kind of like a clean board. Another thing that's sort of funny is this is a carving board, but what I like about it is it has a little well here, normally where the juices would be trapped, but I'm gonna actually keep my flour there, then I always have it. So if you have a board like this, start on the other side, and then when you do the second kneading like this, do the carving side, so you have a little place for your flour. Okay, so because this is going to make 2 baguettes, form it into like a little loaf like this, and then flour your knife, and then cut it in half. That's my oven, it has preheated. So it's a good idea to get the oven preheated because it's a high temperature and it'll take a bit of time to get up to it. We have our 2 loaves here. It does get sticky, so you might even want to have, I need even more flour. Luckily, I bought a 5-kilo bag. All right, there we go, a little bit more flour. So I think the easiest way to form the baguette is to make yourself a little square like that, then fold over 1/2 and knead it, and then fold over the other half and sort of knead it like that. So you just kind of keep folding it like that until you can start to then roll it.
It's like a sausage.
Yeah, exactly. You can taper off your ends. I think the most important thing is just to make sure it's equal in thickness. There. And then you just plop it in this thing. There. And then you're going to do the same exact thing with the other one. Rolling and extending our little snake here. Tapering off the ends. Then the last thing you want to do is put some slits in this bread. So make sure you have a nice, clean, floured knife. All right. And I do like probably 4 or 5. And really make sure you're cutting it. Because that's going to really help it shape and get like that crusty edge and bake all the way inside. There. And then the other secret to get that crusty exterior is to fill a pan, like a little loaf pan, anything you have that can then sit alongside the bread with some water. So I filled it up about halfway there. And what this is going to do is create that really delicious crusty exterior. To me, the marking of a great baguette is the crusty exterior and then the soft, pillowy interior. In fact, this is how I learned the word for rubber in French, caoutchouc, because my husband would say, your baguettes here in the States, they always taste like caoutchouc or rubber because they don't have that real crusty exterior. So the water is going to help with that. It's going to create steam, which is then going to create that lovely crust. All right, in they go for about 25 to 30 minutes. So I put the bread in the far part of the oven, and then I put my little water up front. I like to keep this one empty just to give a little bit of distance between the water and the bread. All right, there it goes.
Bye-bye.
Okay, it has been 25 minutes that our bread has been in the oven. I am gonna go see what it's looking like and see if it's ready to pull out. Ooh, yes, ooh, that is a hot oven. This is looking good. Just take out our water. And look at these. How yummy does this look? Now, as tempting as it might be to just cut into this, I think it's better that you let it cool for at least 15 minutes or so.
That will just give it time to kind of have the interior set up a little bit and not become too smushy when you go to cut into it. But this is looking very promising. Give it a try, shall we? Now, let's listen for the crunch. This is what makes it so good. And see, you've got that crusty exterior and then this really soft, pillowy interior. And this is what makes it so delicious and so legit. All right, the moment of truth. Now it is time to taste this. Because it's close to lunchtime, I actually dragged out the cheese platter and I am going to just taste this with a little bit of cheese. See, I really love the top, the little crusty top part. So maybe a little bit of this creamy looking specimen. Spread it right on there. All right, let's give it a try. This is so good. Yum! Crusty on the outside, chewy on the inside. If you want a taste of France, this is the ticket. All right, you guys, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I will see you back here next week for another one of my French adventures. Until then, bye.